You are listening to the Beyond Believing podcast. I am your host, Katie Ann. I am a certified life coach, a divorced mom to 5 amazing children, and I am here to share some love and encouragement with you about healing and moving on post-divorce as a Christian woman. Stick around after the show for some details on how we can work together. You are listening to the Beyond Believing podcast, episode number 50. Welcome, my beautiful friends. I am bringing this week a follow-up message from my episode last week about godly womanhood. But before we get into all that, I just wanted to give you a quick reminder that I'm still doing my new case study I am calling Selah Healing. It's designed just for divorced Christian women. It's 12 weeks of private coaching with me, where we're getting crystal clear on how to create the life post-divorce where you wake up refreshed and at peace and breathing easy. My friends, I promise it's possible. I have just 3 seats left for my September group, and I'd love for you to be one of them. Find all of the details about that in my show notes. As always, you can find links for my TikTok and my YouTube accounts, along with how to connect with me in my show notes. I absolutely love hearing from you, so please continue to reach out. Now, last week, I shared what God has taught me about true godly womanhood. I had a request to discuss then, what does godly manhood mean or look like? So today, we're going to be diving into that, even though I will tell you, I was really quite hesitant about this because I don't coach men, for one. I only coach women. And I don't want this to come across as like things I think men should be living up towards. But I know that there's so many of you who are trying to figure out, what then does a godly man look like? Like, I've been through this divorce season. I understand something is gone wrong here in what I thought I knew. And some of you are looking for something new. Some of you are like never wanting to find something new. And some of you are kind of somewhere in the middle of that. But regardless of where you're at, our desire to have a physical relationship with a man or not is at the core of that just a crave to be understood and loved. We're all searching to be filled and to be loved, like I mentioned, to be accepted, for someone just to get us, quote unquote, get us, right? We want someone to sit with us, to mourn with us, to carry the load we pretend really isn't as heavy as it actually is. But more than anything, we just want someone to be with us. I talk to dozens of women every day that are hurting, mourning, grieving, carrying some really heavy loads as they try to navigate the roles of both a husband and a wife that you're really just not designed to carry. There we have a man and a wife to carry each of these roles for a reason. But the truth is that only Christ can love us this way. A godly man is simply a reflection of the bridegroom, Christ himself. So today, as I share these 5 characteristics of a godly man, I want you to hear how they point us back to Christ and how Christ is the ultimate example for each of these in our lives. Because again, whether or not you have a man physically present in your life in a relationship, in a godly relationship, God ultimately has to be your number one relationship, even after you have something with a human on this earth. But even if you never do have something physical with or tangible with a godly man, you can always rely on God. You can always rely on Christ, and you can always depend on that relationship. And that should be something that is valuable and sought after heavily, as I mentioned last week about a godly woman. That is a trait and a necessity of a godly woman, is that you're seeking that out. And I think you're going to find that regardless of what you do or don't find as far as like a tangible relationship in this world, that relationship with God ultimately is going to be the most satisfying for you ever. So, characteristic number 1, a godly man is seeking God, and he knows his identity and purpose. Now, a man who seeks God is reflecting Jesus, and Jesus perfectly sought out the Father. Your heart's desire to be pursued by a man, that's ultimately, again, fulfilled by Christ who first sought you. John 15:16 says, "You did not choose me, but I chose you and appointed you that you should go and bear fruit, and that your fruit should abide, so that whatever you ask the Father in my name, he may give it to you." Now, you can recognize a godly man and his pursuit of God by the fruits of his life. What does his faith reflect in his life tangibly? Who is he in the quiet moments when no one is watching? How does he spend his personal free time? What are the desires of his heart, and what is he pursuing? Christ himself modeled seeking God daily in Luke 5:16 when he said he would withdraw to desolate places and pray. Christ took time to fill his cup with the word of God and by building his relationship with God. And he gave him intentional and intimate conversations so that he knew and recognized his voice. Now, a godly man is also seeking God daily, giving himself time to withdraw and pray and to be close and to commune with the Father. Jesus also knew exactly who he was. A godly man knows his identity and his purpose in Christ. He knows his why. If you know anything about Simon Sinek, start with why. You know your purpose. Why do you do the things you do? Luke 4:43 says, I was sent for this purpose. This is Christ talking to the Pharisees. I was sent to share a message. John 8:14 says, I know where I came from and where I am going. That is powerful, my friends. And I want you to think about how many men do you know that really proclaim that boldly? A godly man knows his purpose. He has a vision. He is actively pursuing both a vision and his purpose, and he lives confident in the guidance of God with him. Proverbs 31:23. I had to include Proverbs 31 here somewhere, but I love that this points it out. It is not just about a godly woman. It says, her husband is known in the gates when he sits among the elders in the land. A godly man has his own name, my friends. He is his own man. He knows his worth and identity, again, in God, and he seeks to fulfill that with God. He is not looking to a woman to fulfill him. He is not looking for a woman to elevate him. He is not looking for a mother. He is not looking for anyone to be taking care of him. He is known, he has his own reputation, and he is respected, just like Christ is. Whether or not there is a man in your life, your deepest sense of security can only come, again, from pursuing God himself. And that is true also for a man. All right, characteristic number 2, a godly man seeks wisdom and counsel. Now, just as Christ constantly communed with the Father, he was seeking him out in prayer, which I just love so much. The reminders in the New Testament of Christ going a far ways off to pray. I just love these reminders because this is important for us, my friends. You have to take time here, and you learn so much by building that relationship and foundations. One of the things Christ also did was, as he was communing with the Father, a godly man demonstrates humility by seeking wisdom outside of himself. Proverbs 11:18 says, where there is no guidance, a people falls, but in an abundance of counselors, there is safety. Wise counselors, my friends, a wise, godly man knows that he does not have all the answers. He knows where to look, and he seeks them out in good resources. 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18 says, for the word of the cross is folly to those who are perishing, but to us who are being saved, it is the power of God. A godly man seeks the wisdom and counsel in the word. Jesus even prayed before big decisions. In Luke chapter 6, verses 12 and 13, it says, in these days, he went out to the mountain to pray. Again, he's going out to pray and seek God. And all night, he continued in prayer to God. And when the day came, he called his disciples and chose from them 12 whom he named apostles. So before he even sought out apostles, he was seeking out the wisdom of God. He was seeking out. Now, there wasn't anybody on the earth that was more wise than God and Christ. So he's pointing to God. But a godly man understands that there are biblical resources and men of God that he can trust, and he does, and he seeks out their counsel. I read last week, Ezra chapter 8, verses 21 through 31, and I just have been obsessed with this ever since. I feel like this is so powerful. I wrote all over my Bible, like the power of preparation. Now, Ezra, in this little section, is preparing to take the Israelites back to Jerusalem. After King Nebuchadnezzar, he's ransacked all the temple. The new king is given him provision and power and authority and basically free reign of the people to take them all back to reestablish the law of Moses for the Israelites. And it's a 900-mile journey. Ezra, in chapter 8, verse 21, says that he proclaimed a fast to humble themselves. so that they could seek a safe journey for themselves, their children, and all of their goods, all the provisions. They were given all the vessels to take back to the temple. He knew that this is a really big journey. The second thing he does to prepare himself is then they actually did the fast and implored of God for their safe journey. I just love that word, implored. Like, I just have been meditating on this ever since. I just think this is so powerful of a reminder. My friends, you are on a journey. You want to get somewhere and you are trying to navigate this. Why would we not be imploring after our God? And a wise, godly man is also going to see wisdom in the word and in what he learns in the word and utilize the resources that he has been given to do that. So the third thing Ezra does is he sets apart 12 priests and divides all the provisions that they had been given from the king equally among them. And then he spread out the responsibility among all of those. So he's sharing the load. He doesn't think that I'm the man who has all the answers because I've been appointed and given all these things. He understands this is a big task and I need help. And then he goes and with the Lord, after he's fasted and prayed, what is the help I need with the provisions that he has given me? And then the last thing he does, my friends, is he anoints and sanctifies and blesses those he set apart and their provisions. He says to them, you are holy to the Lord. Oh my gosh, that is just so powerful. A godly man understands that the things he has been given are a blessing from God and that they are God's. And he takes and utilizes again this wisdom and this counsel, and he applies it in his life. Christ, it says in Isaiah 9:6, he's your wonderful counselor. You can depend on him. You can rely on God, my friend. It says his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. You can rely on Christ to guide and direct you and to bring you peace in your life. And a godly man is going to be looking for that as well. When you long for steady guidance, remember Christ himself is the source of wisdom. 1 Corinthians 1:30 says, and because of him you are in Christ Jesus, who became to us wisdom from God, righteousness and sanctification and redemption. A godly man understands the word, friends, and he seeks to apply it in his life as he seeks the counsel and wisdom of those around him. He is seeking also the wisdom of God. Characteristic number 3, a godly man seeks to honor you as a godly woman. Now, if you haven't already caught a theme here, my friends, the godly characteristics and traits of a godly woman also apply to a godly man. Why? Because we are God's creations, my friends. The deepest honor you ever experience comes from Christ, who laid down his life for you. If you're looking for a godly man, my friends, look to Christ. Look to this relationship that I already encouraged you to develop, because he is really the only one who's going to fill what it is you're looking to fill. Proverbs 31:11 says, the heart of her husband trusts in her. Again, this is the Proverbs 31 woman. These are the quality and characteristics of her husband. He knows he can trust his godly woman. If you are a godly woman, my friend, you're going to attract a godly man. Ephesians 5:25 and 32 says, husbands, love your wives as Christ loved the church and gave himself up for her. And then it says, this mystery is profound. And I am saying that it refers to Christ and the church. One of the most powerful things you can do as you look and seek for a godly man is to look and see, how did Christ love the church? How did he give himself up for her? How is that relationship established and built and grown and developed? And how does it progress, my friends? I love this in 1 Peter 3:7. It says, in an understanding way. A godly man is seeking understanding and how to honor you as a godly woman. How does he trust in you? How does he love you the way God loves the church? He is seeking out these answers for himself. He is looking to figure this out. He is looking to fulfill this, and he understands this is his role. Now, Christ honors you by calling you his bride. He clothes you in righteousness and presenting you blameless, as Ephesians 5:27 says. He understands you better and more fully than any other human is ever going to, my friends. But even if you've never been honored by a man on this earth, you are honored, valued, and cherished by your bridegroom, Christ. But ultimately, when you are led to a godly man, he is going to mirror this relationship of Christ and the church. And the more you understand that, the easier it will be for you to recognize and receive it from a godly man. Now, characteristic number 4, a godly man leads you to God and emulates his love. His leadership is servant leadership that is perfectly modeled for him and you by Christ. In Hosea chapter 2, verses 19 and 20, it says, I will betroth you to me forever in steadfast love and in mercy. Christ is telling you, you are my bride. I am your bridegroom. You and I are bonded. You are mine and I am yours. A godly man points you to God. And again, he mirrors that love and that kind of a relationship. Isaiah 54:5 says this, for your maker is your husband. The Lord of hosts is his name. I'm going to let that sink in for a second. Ephesians 5:2 says, walk in love as Christ loved and gave himself up for us. And then in verses 26 and 27, that he might sanctify her. This is talking about how husbands love their wives. That he might sanctify her, having cleansed her by the washing of the water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor. This is one reason why and how Christ is the bridegroom and the church is the bride. He is presenting the church to himself in splendor without spot or wrinkle or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. A godly man leads you to God, honors you by protecting you, and then emulates the love of God. Now, John 15:9 says, abide in my love. God does not tell you to seek after the love of a man, my sweet friend. He tells you to seek after him. And a godly man is going to point you to seeking after the love of God first and foremost above his own, because he knows he's fallible. He knows he's going to disappoint you. He knows he's human and he's not perfect. And as much as he loves and adores you, he's going to fall short at times, my friend, just like you are. As I mentioned before, God chooses you. A godly man reminds you of that often. You, my friend, are already chosen. Jesus doesn't command from far away. He enters right where you're at. I was listening to a podcast the other day. The episode is called Traps That Keep Marriages Broken and Truths That Restore Them with Ashley Jones. I will link this in my show notes because this was really powerful that I saw, was about specifically how women and men in our marriages get a little bit off kilter because we're seeking out the wrong source of comfort. Men are seeking to solve a solution. They're seeking to provide a solution, and women just want to be heard. They just want to be sat with. They want to just be seen and understood. Well, so she brings out this point in here that in John 11:35, Jesus wept. Now, Jesus leads by compassion and sacrificial love, the We Need to Talk podcast with Ashley Jones. That's what the podcast is called, sorry. Okay, so she pointed out in this podcast that I thought was so powerful was that Christ's message was so powerful because he sat with Mary and Martha as they were mourning the death of Lazarus. Now, all leading up to this story, it is talking about how Christ himself, he knows Lazarus is sick. He knows he is going to raise Lazarus. He knows he is going to redeem him. He has the power and he has all the solutions. But he gets there. Mary points out, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother had not died. Martha says, Lord, if you'd been here, my brother would not have died. And the people there all come out and he says he was moved with compassion and he wept with them, my friends. He didn't come storming in saying, oh, don't worry, I've got the resurrection power. I'm going to raise him from the dead. You don't need to be sad or anything. He validated their emotions and he just said, I have compassion on you. And he wept with you. And he took time and saw and understood and let them know he understood the depth of their pain. He didn't belittle or diminish their grief. He was moved again and he wept with them. A godly man understands what it means to take time to sit with you and to allow you to process things, and that God is ultimately the one who's going to be able to take all your pain, not necessarily him. When you crave a love that quote unquote gets you, remember Christ already leads you in a perfect love. Any godly man's love should be a reflection of that love of God, but not the source of it, my friends. Characteristic number 5, a godly man is submissive to God. Now, Christ himself modeled submission to the Father, even to the cross. In John chapter 5, verse 19, it says, "So Jesus said to them, 'Truly, truly, I say to you, the Son can do nothing of his own accord, but only what he sees the Father doing.'" He submits to the will of God. Philippians 2:8 says, "In being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross." His submission, my friends, brought you life and salvation. Your deepest security isn't in a man's obedience, but in Jesus' perfect obedience on your behalf. And submission isn't about submitting to men. It is about respect and fear for the Lord. Because God told you to submit to your husbands as your husband submits to Christ. If Christ can submit, my friends, so can you, and so will a man of God. A man's submission to God is important, but your peace, again, comes from knowing Christ already fulfilled this perfectly. Submission isn't weakness, it's strength under God's authority. Christ modeled this in Gethsemane. In Luke chapter 22, verse 42, he says, "Father, if you are willing, remove this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done." Friends, this is like one of the most powerful verses for me whenever I'm getting in my own way. And whenever I think I've got all the solution, I've got all the answers, that even Christ, my friends, even Christ submitted to the will of God. Godly manhood points us back to Christ, the true bridegroom. Whether or not a man enters your life again, you already have the one who fully loves, accepts, and completes you. Just going to give you a challenge to ask yourself, where have you been looking for love and acceptance in people, in men, instead of Christ? And how can you root yourself more deeply in God as your husband this week? I love to have a couple of questions on my mind every week as I'm going through my planners, and I'm just going to offer these up for you to just think about and ponder this next week. And my sweet friend, as I mentioned last week, it isn't your job to correct and redirect your husband or any godly man, but that is the job of the Spirit. So as you're going through these things, let's not use it as a weapon for ways to highlight how our godly men might be falling short, because reality is there's a lot of characteristics that each of us possess that are not so godly. And what is important to one person might not be necessarily the most important to another. Again, I want to remind you to stay focused on God and Christ as your bridegroom, because he's the very best and most clear example of the kind of man you want to be yoked to and with. And of course, I'm thinking about my own sweet Boaz as I was putting this together, and what characteristics does he portray and how does he lead me? And it is in all of these things, he portrays these not perfectly, because nobody's perfect. I'm not portraying any of the godly characters. There's no one that is actually godly all on our own. Any godliness that's coming out of us is the Spirit's work in us. And of course, that you need time to kind of see one's true character really develop and see what that is. But what stood out to me as I'm thinking about my own Boaz, what was it that reminded me, like, I really believe this might be a godly man, or I can have confidence that this is a godly man? I had so many very wise friends and acquaintances that are biblically minded, that love God and love the Word, that I knew and I trusted their opinion of, that vouched for his character, that reminded me like he really loves God. And there were enough things that I saw him doing before we ever started courting that he genuinely had a love of God, his faith and his dedication to the Lord. And yes, again, he possesses all of these and reminds me of the love of God that God has taught me comes from him. And of course, again, neither of us are perfect, but it isn't about perfection, my friends. It's about pursuit. It's about the pursuit of God, the desires of God for our lives, for his will and his word, and that to be reflected in everyday life. And my Boaz works tirelessly to live that out. He calls it the fifth gospel, his life, and he shares that with me. Again, perfect isn't the requirement for you, my friend, either. So don't expect that of an earthly man. And because I know you want to have just like a few specifics, here are just a few things that my Boaz does that help me know he truly is a man of God, that he exhibits not just these 5 characteristics that I shared, but I know at the end of the day, regardless of what is happening, he's always seeking after God, but he's in pursuit of God's will in his life in all things. He prays over us and for us regularly. He brings peace and comfort and clarity into my life, not chaos. He isn't looking for me to fulfill him in any way. He seeks the guidance of biblical mentors and friends and encourages me to do the same. Again, his words lift me up and encourage and empower me and point me to God and the love of God. And he is humble before the Lord, but also confident in his identity and a role as one of God's elect, and he takes that very seriously. And I will just add, friend, that any relationship you have is a reflection of the relationship you have with yourself and with God. If you're not finding the kind of godly relationships you desire, maybe you need to stop and reflect on your relationship with God and with yourself. God does see your heart. He sees your tears. He sees the places that you feel unseen and unloved and forgotten. But you're not forgotten, my friend, and you are chosen. You are pursued. You are the beloved bride of Christ. God reminds you, I will never leave you or forsake you in Hebrews 13:5. May you know deep in your soul, my friend, that you are fully accepted and loved, not because of your performance or because of the things that you do, but because of God's perfect love, which was poured out on the cross for you. Your worth is not tied to your past, to your divorce, or even your current relationship status. Your worth is secured in God. Jesus, the bridegroom who laid down his life for you. Surrender every longing and burden and ache of your heart into God's hands. Only God can fill those empty spaces. Only God can heal what feels broken. Only God can satisfy your deepest desires to be loved and known. As you root yourself in God's love, you will walk in greater confidence, joy, and peace that cannot be shaken. You will rise up as God's daughter, clothed in strength and dignity when your heart is anchored in God. God is your safe place. He is your healer. He is your covering and your everlasting love. Have a great day, my friends. You have been listening to the Beyond Believing podcast, and if you liked anything you heard today, I want to invite you to come and work with me privately. This month, I'm starting up a brand new Selah Healing case study group, and I'm looking for a handful of new women to mentor and work closely with. This invitation is very time sensitive, and I won't be able to offer this kind of personalized coaching and access to me for much longer. If this sounds like something you are interested in, find all the details at the link in my bio. I can't wait to hear from you.